What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Queer Collective podcast. My name is Karbon.
And I'm Emily.
And welcome to the show. So today we are going to be talking about how to deal with conflict in pretty much any scenario. Emily here has stated a very, very kind statement, and it's been out to the press. The press knows about it. She has stated publicly that I am very okay with dealing with conflict. So that makes me extremely qualified to tell you how to do it.
But on a serious note, this podcast will help you when Mercury is in Gatorade and you are just like losing your titties.
Bananas. We all go through it. Mountain Dew does get into Gatorade a lot. I feel like the majority of the year.
Every other day I see a post about it.
Yeah, exactly. So...
But actually, though,
yes,
the reason that I feel you are very qualified for this, and me less so, is that before I met you, I was extremely explosive. Still am. I would say I still am. I'm a passionate person, one would call me. Emotional, defensive, perhaps. I've definitely gotten better. Your girl has gone to therapy, and I'm here to spread the good word. But on the other hand, Karbon here has taught me like how to approach things in a calm and constructive manner. Wow, and before this, I feel like a lot of my relationships, especially roommate relationships, would get a little sour because anytime I'd be addressed for doing something stupid, I don't know, like leaving a dish in the sink or something, I would get so defensive. And then potentially like in a work scenario, if things aren't going right or if I feel like upset about something, I'll just like be quick to jump to react. I think you really like blossomed into this though. Previously when you were working as a clinic manager.
Hello, clinic manager over here.
She started like reading up all of these books and suddenly she was like a guru.
Y'all ever read?
She did it once.
I did it one time.
Just single time.
Only one. I taught myself how to read just so I could read those books, and
it's an impressive feat.
Yeah, quite an incredible feat.
Yeah.
And it helped me a lot, actually. I read, a couple of books, one of them being Radical Candor, along with, I believe it was called Atomic Habits and the 7 Habits of Highly Successful People or Highly Effective People, something like that. Yeah, all of those and a few more that I can't really remember the title of have really helped me when it comes to approaching conflict. So I have a little bit of a recipe that I would like to share with y'all. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a backstory, a bit of a recipe, and how to apply it to pretty much any scenario that has to do with conflict.
I love it. And I'm just here to bring the yolks. I have no knowledge. Only jokes.
That was a yolk breaking and sizzling.
That's the first part of the recipe. Eggs. You got them? Because I don't.
Okay, so follow along with me here. I'm going to take you on a little bit of an educational ride. So buckle up. So first, a little bit of a backstory. I was, first of all, never very good with conflict. I still don't to this day like dealing with it. I don't enjoy dealing with conflict. I don't love causing conflict or just stumbling upon it, like whoops, fell into conflict.
I love starting drama. No, I'm kidding. I don't at all. I don't.
Yeah, I'm a low maintenance type of person, so that also applies to conflict as well. Really, I was very, very bad at it, in my opinion, until I started being a manager at my previous job at the Mayo Therapy Clinic. The thing was that as a manager, you have to deal with conflict all of the time, usually. Like, hopefully not, but if any conflict does arise, you're kind of the go-to person, right? So that really forced me to step into my own when it comes to just being more upfront and dealing with it in a way that hopefully helps both parties involved feel a lot more calm and a lot more taken care of. So that was always the aim, is just to make sure that somebody feels taken care of. And by doing that, they will take care of you. You know what I'm saying? So prior to that, I will say that I was very much like you. I was very, like, hated conflict so much that I was very quick to react. I was very defensive.
Or passive aggressive.
And passive aggressive, yes.
If you hate conflict, then you'll keep avoiding it. You'll hold in your feelings until it absolutely explodes.
Absolutely, yeah. I would always like kind of feel something. Maybe it's frustration or whatever. And then I would just like, bank it and keep it in that jar and then close up the jar and then I put more in and I close up the jar and I put more in until nothing more fit. And then I would just explode on somebody over nothing. Be like, did you leave this piece of elbow macaroni on this ledge? That's kind of how it happens, no? Like, I feel like that is what a lot of people do, from what I've seen at least, is that they just bottle it. And then one fateful day, the smallest little thing happens and it just all comes spilling out and it's everywhere and you've made a mess and you're like, oh, snap. Wish I hadn't done that. And it's too late.
For real.
So the thing about being a manager, people, if you've never been one, is that people are going to come to you with problems looking for solutions. So what I had to learn very, very quickly is that in order for you to get what you need and to feel safer, calmer, more satisfied, and just in a good place when it comes to dealing with conflict, is that you first need to lay that foundation out for the other person. So yes, you do have to take the lead on this kind of stuff, right? You can't really expect it out of somebody else if, first and foremost, you're not willing to do it yourself, right? So in order to facilitate a peaceful and smooth conflict situation, you have to be willing to put in that effort to lay it out so that you first and foremost make them feel safe. So I'm going to give you an example. Say, for example, Emily and I have a fight. Okay. Hello. And you feel very angry about me not cleaning up the dishes. Okay. And I feel very angry about you not putting away your laundry.
Ooh, we're getting into some real territory.
No. So if we're both hostile towards each other, we're going to come at it aggressive. We're going to come at it also defensive and aggressive at the same time. And we're going to want to protect ourselves, right? Like that's everybody's first instinct, is to protect themselves, so they get defensive and aggressive at the same time. So the way to approach it would not be, hey, why the hell did you not put your clothes in the freaking laundry bin? Do it now. Because that instantly is just so much thrown at you all of a sudden without warning, right? And that goes back to, if I were to keep things, stuffing them in a jar and then spilling out, that is how that would come out.
Yeah.
Right?
And if someone came at me like that, I feel like my instant defensive response would just be to like throw out the bad things they've also been doing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So then as soon as you start without warning just throwing things at somebody, they're going to be like, oh my God, what is happening? Protect myself. I'm going to throw things back at you so that I don't feel so terrible, and so that you take some of the blame, because everything's on me right now, right? So everybody's first reaction or first instinct is to get defensive when something is being thrown so aggressively at them, right? So you have to sort of neutralize the court before you even approach the situation.
Do we use some milk to do that?
You use milk after your eggs.
Ew.
So the way to approach it would be first to say, hey, do you mind if we chat right now? Right? That is giving them the inkling that you're going to talk about something's going to be talked about. It's also giving them a warning, right? That you're going to talk to them about something that's on your mind. And it's calm enough that they would probably be like, yeah, sure, what's up? Right? So it's already kind of like starting on a smooth note. Now, the next thing that you want to do...
As you're saying this, I'm like realizing all the times you've done this to me. Anyway, continue.
It's like all these things coming into realization, like, oh, that's why you did that. What?
You're exposing yourself. Okay, continue.
Yeah. So after that, after you say like, hey, can we have a chat about something? You're kind of like, warming up the oven for your eggs and your milk. So now that the oven's, heating up, now you can start to actually make your little foundation, right? Your little eggs and milk base, or I don't know what we're cooking.
Make
just
it an
eggs and
omelet?
milk.
Okay.
I guess so.
A frittata if it's going in the oven.
Oh, a frittata. We're getting fancy. Okay. So the way to now state your frustrations or your grievances or anything that's on your mind is not by instantly throwing it at them after you said, hey, can we talk?
Yeah.
The first step is actually to put yourself out on the line and kind of be a little bit vulnerable and a little bit sort of outing yourself so that person feels even more comfortable with you. Yeah. For example, if we're going back to the whole dishes in the sink versus laundry in the hamper situation, I could say, I've noticed that you've been very frustrated about me not washing the dishes lately and you've been having to do them. So I really wanted to talk to you about that and tell you that I am sorry that I haven't been cleaning them. That is completely on me. That is my bad. I fell short. I want to assure you that I plan on changing that. Starting right now, I'm going to clean the dishes and I'm not going to leave that on you anymore because I know it's been frustrating for you.
Thanks.
So I'm really sorry. Do you feel seen and heard?
I feel really seen right now.
Yeah. So once you put yourself out on the line first, that person starts to feel a little bit more calm. They start to feel like they can talk to you about things. They start to feel like you're listening and you're paying attention and that you really care, which is truly the most important ingredient for setting a very, very good foundation for conflict, right?
I feel like it like defuses the person.
Exactly.
Like before your example of like coming at me, just like telling me right away, I like instantly felt triggered.
Really?
I swear to God, I was like about to come at you.
What? And this is just an example.
I was seeing red.
Oh,
but now I feel happy. I'm like, yes, you're in the wrong. But now I'm ready to hear you out.
Honestly, yeah, you kind of have to like, if I'm gonna be a little bit sort of blunt about it, but it's also a fact, is you kind of have to feed.
There you go.
Yeah, you have to feed the ego a little bit, and not in a way that is like malicious or deceiving or, just to get something that you want, but in a way that really like makes them feel seen and heard.
Yeah. Well, I think at the same time too, it's not necessarily just feeding someone's ego. Like at the end of the day, conflict takes two.
Yeah, exactly.
And if they're doing something to piss you off, it's likely that you're also doing something to piss them off.
Exactly.
So,
yeah. And on that note, I 100% agree. Conflict always takes two, because even when the other person is completely in the wrong and you feel like you did nothing wrong, there's still the act of enabling that behavior, right? Like if somebody does something really, really wrong to you and you don't say anything, either right then and there or at the soonest chance that you have, then you're enabling that behavior, and it still takes two. Like it's still a fact. So you first have to acknowledge your part before you can even begin to acknowledge their part.
And what would you say like some examples of enabling are?
Okay, so let me give you an example of enabling. Let's go back to the dishes in the sink versus the laundry in the basket thing. Let's say, for example, that I've been doing all of the dishes. I've been doing my part 100%. Not a single dish, not a single one is in the sink dirty. But
you're an icon.
But all of your clothes are all over the floor, not in the hamper, right? And this has been going on for a week or 2 weeks or a month even.
You let it slide that long?
Well, no, I wouldn't, because
it's true, you absolutely would
conflict. But if I was an enabler, then that could be the case, right? and I'm choosing a very minute example, but it works with any case, right? Yeah. So that would be me enabling you to always leave your clothes on the floor because I didn't say anything to you throughout all of that time, whether it be a week, a couple weeks, or a month. I didn't say, hey, this really bothers me. Can you please put it in the hamper next time and going forward? And if I don't say that to you ever, how can I expect you to just read my mind, right? So I'm enabling you to perpetuate this behavior, and it's frustrating me, but I'm just bottling it up, keeping it in that jar, waiting for it to explode one day.
Yeah, building up that passive aggression.
And that is just as bad as committing the crime of the clothes.
Word. Yeah. But it do take confidence though to do that. Like perhaps not with your partner, but definitely with like a roommate or a colleague or something. Like
yeah, of course.
It can be more frightening because you're worried perhaps about stirring up drama with someone that you live with, who's someone like that's always around you, or you're worried maybe about addressing it to like a superior, etc.
Yeah, and my advice on that would actually be to start at your base comfort level. So, for example, if I wanted to take this kind of approach to roommates, to my workplace, to anybody that I deal with in life, I would start where I feel the most comfortable, which is with you, right? So if I start being just very honest about how I'm feeling with you and start practicing how to deal with conflict with you, then as soon as I get good at that, I can take that to the next level. Maybe it's with roommates. Maybe it's at work. Maybe it's with family. So you can like build it up. It doesn't have to be all at once. I would suggest to start where you're most comfortable and then go from there.
That's actually what I did, and it worked.
Nice. Very nice. Good job. High five for Emily. So when it comes to enabling, basically, you really need to check yourself before you place all of the blame on just one person. Because
check yourself before you riggedy wreck yourself.
Riggedy wreck yourself, because 9 times out of 10, it takes 2. Yeah. So back to the repacy. The next thing that you want to do after you have approached them in a calm way and put yourself out there first to lay that foundation of trust and of calmness, then once you allow them to speak, maybe they want to say, thank you for saying that, thank you for your effort, or yes, that has been bothering me, or whatever it is that they say. You want to not just skip over what they say because that defeats the purpose of making somebody feel calm and seen and heard. So
that's the heard part.
That's the heard part. So whatever you say to them, even if you're really going sort of out of your comfort zone to put yourself out there and admit that you were wrong on something, and then they give you feedback and say, let's say that they give you feedback that's a little bit triggering, where it's like, yeah, actually you were wrong on that thing, you know?
Because you already put yourself out on that.
Yeah, that can absolutely happen. And it has happened to me many times in the past where I've said like, hey, this is exactly where I am at fault. These are all the places where I dropped the ball. This and that, later, all out, fully just vulnerable. There's been times where they're like, yep, that's it, and that's it, and that's it, and that is correct. You've been wrong this whole time. And I'm like, I didn't expect that kind of a hit, you know, because that can happen, but you have to kind of be prepared for that. If you're really gonna put yourself out there and list all the ways that you can improve, then you damn well better be prepared to actually improve on it and admit when you're wrong. Like, you can't just say, hey, I'm wrong, and then that person be like, yeah, you're wrong, and then you're like, wait a minute, but I'm not wrong. Like, no, you can't take it back.
You have to get ready for them to agree.
You have to get ready for them to agree. You have to fully go through with it. So it's a whole immersive experience.
I love it. 4D.
It's a 4D experience. You feel it, you see it, you touch it, I don't know.
Sexy. Okay, continue.
So be ready for that kind of feedback. It could be very, very great feedback, or it could be like a yup, you're wrong feedback. Whatever the case, be ready to just hear them out, like actually hear them out actively.
Yeah, what I want to say about that too
is
the listening part is really important, I think. Like, you can't say that you were wrong and then just skip over that and jump right into...
Exactly.
Now this is what I have to say, because that's part of like making someone feel heard, is like creating that space for them to talk, not interrupting. And like the interrupting is key. That can really get the fire going. Yeah.
Especially if they're a hothead.
Yeah. And like I've been practicing that a lot because I have really bad ADHD, and that results in me interrupting people a lot. So it takes a lot of practice for me not to interrupt people. But I've gotten better at it, I think. And it's just
100% have.
It's about sort of like clearing your mind while you're listening and just focusing on what they're saying. Like before, I used to think ahead, like 2 sentences or whatever, and that would cause me to interrupt. But just be in the moment. I think it was partially like a social anxiety thing. Like I always used to plan my sentences so that I wouldn't F them up. But honestly, planning them makes you F them up more because you plan so hard that you're like, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. I really want to kind of highlight a note that you said, which was to really listen and not planning ahead.
Yeah.
Because in my experience, a lot of people listen to react.
Yeah.
Like, which is not true listening. When you listen to react, that's you on defensive mode, right? You're listening to that person's feedback, and maybe they say something and you're like, oh, but I'm gonna say this thing as soon as as soon as it's my turn. I'm like, oh, I can't wait to say this thing. And the thing is, something that I've been challenging myself with, that I encourage you to challenge yourself with and to put into practice, is that when that's happening, notice it, acknowledge it, be like, oh, I'm ready to say something, but they're still talking, and you're like, okay, I'm ready to say something. If by the end of their whole speech or whatever, their feedback, if by the end of it you still remember that thing that you wanted to say, then it's important to say it.
It's worth saying. Yeah,
it's worth saying. But there's so many things that I have found myself being like, oh, I can't wait to say this thing, and then I like wait and I listen, and new information continues to come in.
Yeah.
And by the time that they finish, when I'm ready to talk, I remember the most important points, but there's so many little points that I was like, oh, I can't wait to say this. And then I'm like, I don't even remember what that point was. Yeah. And it's because it just wasn't that important. You just wanted to react. You just wanted to say something. You wanted to have a rebuttal.
Yeah. And usually those things are the Kindle to the fire.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. And you don't really want to focus on the Kindle. You want to focus on the big logs.
Totally.
You want to tackle the big logs. The Kindle is like, is it really that important in the grand scheme of things? Yeah. Right? And you have to acknowledge, like, what is Kindle versus what are the big logs that you have to really tackle and extinguish the fire on. True. You know what I'm saying? So actively listening, not listening to react, and then after you hear them out fully, hitting on the most important points that come up for you in, again, a calm way that is reassuring to them, and also is extinguishing fires.
And you're still addressing their feelings now. You haven't gotten to what you have to say. You haven't even
gotten to your part yet.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're still fully addressing, fully working through what they're feeling, what they're going through, validating emotions, bringing reassurance to the situation, bringing solutions and a calm, like how to move forward kind of mindset.
And this do take maturity.
This do take some maturity.
And restraint.
Definitely restraint. But I promise that if you do put this into practice, the restraint will absolutely be worth it. Because you can get a lot more done and a lot more solved when you just listen and don't react.
And really like strengthen your relationships too, absolutely, I would say. Yeah.
I agree with that. So folks, if you're still following along with me,
I'm here.
At this point, you have laid out everything for them. You've made them feel safe. You've made them feel heard. You've addressed the issues that they've had in the back of their minds and that, you know, they haven't been addressing. Now, because they feel so calm and they're like, wow, thank you for listening and thank you for, you know, being so calm about this and addressing this. Like, it's really been on my mind. Like, I'm really happy that we had this conversation. Now that they're in that state of calmness and they trust you more now you can lay out your piece. Now you can start to talk about what they can do better. And again, this approach has to be done in a calm, reassuring way. But the thing is, now this is the secret. This is literally like, this is the secret sauce.
The KFC repacy.
The KFC 11 spices and herbs secret sauce repacy. Or is it just a spice? The 11 okay, we're moving on with that. So the secret repacy is that because you've already taken care of their feelings, now pretty much no matter what you say, as long as you say it in a calm way, they are going to be so receptive and so willing to listen and so willing to make you feel seen and heard that it's going to be such a beautiful reciprocal conversation. You know, you've set the example and you've set the path to have that kind of a conversation. And now everything just starts to fall into place. You don't have to do any more of that grunt work. You can just lay it all out now.
It's their turn.
It's their turn.
Yeah.
And they're going to be willing to accept whatever it is that they have done wrong, or ways that they can improve, or and validate your feelings. Like, you've already put in all of the work for that to just fall into place. Like, you're done with doing the work. You know what I'm saying?
My only question for you is, how do you then transition? Like, do you have examples of transitioning from the conversation about them to going on to like your complaints?
Honestly, I like to keep it very blunt and honest. And majority of the time, once somebody has felt fully seen, heard, calm, all the other great stuff, I say, there's something else that's kind of been on my mind, and I'm wondering if you'd be okay to talk about this. Right?
Yeah.
And literally for me, 10 times out of 10 it's always been a yes.
Yeah,
I've never gotten a no.
Good.
Yeah.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10. Back to the transition piece, if you don't want to do it in a very blunt way. So let's say that you're tackling a conflict and it's mostly a communication issue between the two, right? Like, you're trying to solve a communication issue. Yeah. So that person says like, oh, thank you for hearing me out. Thank you for this solution. I'm really happy we had this talk. I feel a lot better now. And you say, absolutely. Like, I feel so much better too. I'm really glad we had this conversation. Now, to move forward, I really want to make this, and this happen for you. And I really want our relationship to strengthen. And I think that in order for me to be able to complete this, and this for you, this is what I need from you. Right? Yeah. So, because the thing is that it's still, even though now it's about you, it's still about them. Right? Because in order for you to show up for them in the way that they need, these things are what you need. These are the requirements so that you can fully show up for them.
I think that's a really good example for talking to like a boss, for sure.
Yeah.
Right. This recipe, as I'm like hearing you lay it out, honestly works for everything. I've really seen it work for everything.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if you ever need to think about 3 key points, it's make them feel safe, find solutions to their issues first, and then the third step would be, now it's time for you to lay out your concerns, your issues, or frustrations, whatever it may be.
Nice.
Yeah.
Milk, flour, eggs.
Milk, flour, eggs, 350 degrees, boom. You're done. And it's worked for me pretty much every single time. Like, any time that me dealing with conflict has failed is when I've failed to do that plan. Yeah.
And I would say the only thing that would make you fail at this would be failing to check your ego at the door before you go into this conversation.
It's a huge ego check at the very beginning, at the beginning. So you really have to kind of mentally be able to, it goes back to the whole maturity piece that you mentioned, which was to really be able to check that ego at the door and kind of consult with yourself, set your intentions, because that's super important. Don't go into it in a hostile way. Don't go into it if you're feeling very worked up. Don't go into it if you're feeling very negative. Like you have to be in a very calm state of mind in order for this recipe to work, honestly, because anytime that I've tried it while I've been worked up or angry or just not feeling very good, regardless of whatever the situation is, even if like I just had like a very like bad day completely unrelated to that topic, if I go into it with that mindset, it's just not gonna work. It's not like I'm not gonna get anything out of it. No progress will be made. So you really have to enter it willingly with a calm state of mind and be ready to lay yourself out there and just be vulnerable with that person in the sense of, you know, admitting that you're wrong about something.
Work. Yeah, I think that was some solid advice.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I hope that, you know, if you're not very good at dealing with conflict, like I haven't been in the past, or like Emily hasn't been in the past, I hope that this helps you out at least a little bit, or gets you thinking about how to approach the next piece of conflict that you might potentially deal with.
But if you give this a go and it works for you, or even if it doesn't work for you, would love to hear about it either in the comments or a direct message.
Yeah, and let us know in the comments how you currently deal with conflicts, and if you have any tips for us, because even though I have a little recipe made up for myself, and I guess now for Emily, it doesn't mean that it's perfect, and it doesn't mean that I know how to use it every single time. So
constantly
leave those comments in the comment box below.
And we're constantly learning and growing.
Exactly.
That's about it, baby.
That is all that we have for you guys today. I hope you learned a little something. If you like this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, like, subscribe, all the stuff, comment, and we'll see you in the next pod. Peace.